And Jennifer or David, I take it the packet we received back last Friday is still valid.
Yes. That
I mean, YouTube, we'll wait a couple more minutes here. All right, let's see. It's almost 30. I'm just going to take the slide down. A few people are joining us here. I want to make sure Cliff gets back into the meeting. Let me see who we've got. I see him logging in now. I don't have audio with Cliff yet, but I think he'll be joining us shortly. And just a reminder to all that this meeting is being recorded and streamed to YouTube.
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Cliff. Very good. Good to have you back with us.
I am remote and on a Wi-Fi system that goes through either my phone or HughesNet, and depending on the morning, one connection, so we should roll.
Yep, it's 8:30, I would say. I want to make sure as long as you're good to go, we can start. Just a reminder that public comment is being monitored by Cindy Raskin. So if you're chairing a committee, you can ask Cindy if there's public comment at any point. And all of our votes should be by voice vote by roll call so that Jennifer can properly make a note of the minutes. And so with that, Cliff, whenever you'd like to begin.
I would like to call the meeting to order and just confirm again, Cindy, that we have no public comment this morning. And if there is any, I'd like to recognize them as we start our legislative committee this morning.
That's correct, sir. We have no public comment at this time.
All right, well, keep us updated if anybody wants to weigh in. So I'll call the meeting into order, and I don't have the agenda showing on my screen. Are y'all going to post that, or we're going to go from that from a different perspective, or you want my memory to take in? I know David Green's on it fairly early.
Yes, I don't think we're posting the agenda on the screen, but the one item that we wanted to provide for you this morning is a legislative update, and we actually have both of our lobbyists on the call with us this morning. We have Ron Pierce from RSA and Associates to give a state legislative update, and we've got Harry Glenn and Steve Palmer from Vanscoy to provide a federal legislative update. So if it's okay with you, we could begin with Ron Pierce.
We need to call the roll first, David.
I think that'd be a great idea. Good morning, Ron.
Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and call the roll real quick just to see who we have. Cliff Manuel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jennifer. Present.
Commissioner Starkey. Jim Holton. Commissioner Long. I know she's running late. Rich McLean.
Present.
Commissioner Mitten. Okay. All right. Well, we just have 2 members so far, so we definitely don't have quorum, but we don't need it for this meeting.
We're not going to vote, so we can listen to
okay.
our updates. And just out of curiosity, use Zoom in the future. Is there a way to pull up the agenda on the side while you're on your computer? Or is that something I just would have printed next to me when we're doing Zoom meetings in the future?
There is a way by which if I could take the agenda and put it on the screen, much like I can share a screen. So, you know, you'd see like right now I've got this PowerPoint up like that. So that's our standard slide in between meetings. I could do that. We can talk about that if we'd like to make that part of the procedure. And I do see Commissioner Long coming online now.
Well, especially as we get to a board meeting with a little more complicated agenda, it'd be nice to have that, especially in a board meeting or a more complicated setting. And then on my Zoom, I get to see everybody across the top that's participating. So on a big screen, you know, we could maybe have on the side somewhere the agenda for future meetings.
We can look into
But
that.
anyway, Ron, are you on this morning and available to give us an update?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, everybody.
Chris.
Appreciate the opportunity to be with you. So Tallahassee finished about a month ago, and I'll give you two quick updates of issues we've been working on in Tallahassee on your behalf. Number one is our state appropriation. I'm proud to report to you that once again, we're in the state budget at $1.5 million for operations. It is transportation trust fund dollars. It is not any version of non-recurring general revenue or any type of GR for that matter. I'll be honest with you, that's probably a good thing this year. Having trust fund dollars versus any type of GR, when GR potentially is going to be at risk, depending if they have to go back and do a special session. I will tell you, I do believe that the legislature is going to have to go back and do a special session. They passed a $93 billion budget about a month ago, but obviously the revenue estimates they were basing that budget upon can all be thrown out the window at this point. So you've already seen President Galvano been releasing some statements saying that he believes they may have to come back and address how to allocate some of the federal dollars, which, you know, I'm sure Harry's going to talk about in a minute. Some of those dollars that are going to be flowing to the state. In addition, while they do have $3 billion in reserves, we don't know what the revenue estimates are going to be off. We're already hearing as potentially as much as $2 billion for next year, and that could grow, obviously. So I think there will definitely be a special session. I think the timing of it's still kind of up in the air. I think you could see a special session probably sometime in June, if not earlier, but most likely June, depending on the timing of when things begin to start reopening back up. So, but again, the good news is even if they go back to a special session, even if they reopen the budget back up and take dollars from existing projects in next year's budget, we believe, based upon some of the conversations we've been having with some legislative leaders and DOT and others, that I think transportation trust fund dollars should be relatively safe. So we'll obviously do our job and ensure that as we kind of head into a special session, that our $1.5 million will be there and will be there for next year from an operations standpoint. Let me talk briefly about our legislation. The short answer is our legislation did not make it to the finish line. It passed the Florida Senate on a unanimous vote. It went over to the Florida House, and I'll spare you all the details of how the sausage is made in Tallahassee, but we ran into a procedural issue with our bill that ended up coming out of messages. It was not heard that day. When a message from the Senate's not heard on the same day business, it basically it dies. And so unfortunately, the day that our bill was up, they ran out of time and they were unable to get to it, and so our legislation did not pass. And I've talked to David about this. That actually may be a blessing, to be honest with you, because I think one of the things that staff has discovered going through the planning process and kind of some things we learned during this session in Tallahassee is there's maybe a couple additional issues we want to try to add to the bill for next year. And so we'll go back and look at that. And as we kind of begin to look ahead, to the 2021 session, I think there's really two issues we'll need to work on. Is number one, obviously our legislation again. Number one is looking at, some of the issues we had in there, such as allowing the mayors to appoint a designee, looking at cleaning up what the quorum issue is. But again, a couple additional issues I think that staff may want to include in addition on top of those. And probably the most important issue, for you, Mr. Chair, and also for the members of this committee, and I'll mention this to the board later this morning, is you've heard me say this at our last couple of meetings. We can't go back every year looking for non-recurring revenue. At some point in time, as you all build a budget, we can't anticipate, we think we're going to get the money because it's non-recurring every year. We have to go back and ask for it again. So one of the things I would encourage, us as an organization to do, and we're happy to obviously lead the strategy on this, is we really need to look at permanent funding. We need to look at, in the off season of trying to work with DOT and be creative and work with incoming House and Senate leadership, which we're very well positioned there with Chris Browsby, the incoming speaker from Pinellas County, and Senator Wilton Simpson being the incoming Senate president from Pasco. They're both obviously a part of our footprint for TBARTA. So I think if we're going to have that conversation, the next 2 years is the perfect opportunity to do that. Let me end with this. We still have 2 gubernatorial appointments that still need to be made. We have been talking to the governor's office. We hope that those 2 vacancies would have already been filled by now. Obviously, the governor's focus and the state's focus are on different items as we speak. I know that we're looking at it prior to COVID-19, so we'll start revisiting those conversations once the state begins to reopen back up. But we're hopeful that we can have those two board appointments in position for you by the end of summer. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions from any of the committee members.
Committee members, do you have any questions this morning for Ron or follow up for him? Sounds like you did an excellent job, covered all the waterfront. Obviously, we stay committed and interested in working with you on the committed funds annually, so we don't have to run up to Tallahassee every year and ask for our appropriations. I think we're all solid behind you on that. I guess the governor's appointees will stay working hard for TBARTA until we hear otherwise. I'm sure he's got plenty on shit. You staying on top of it for us. So next agenda item, David. David, you're
muted, David. Hang on.
Yeah, excuse me. Be a continuation of legislative update at the federal level. So I'll turn it over to Harry and Steve.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, it's Harry Glenn. Hi, it's Harry Glenn with Van Scoik Associates, and my colleague Steve Palmer is also on the line here. Just want to give you a quick federal update. First of all, I don't think we've talked to you. We had we got under the wire before the whole COVID-19 problem developed. David came up to Washington at the end of February. We had a really good series of meetings with the Tampa Bay area congressional delegation. That was most of the members, and also Dave went over, had a good meeting with Jane Williams and the folks at the Federal Transit Administration. So we were glad we were able to get David up and get that in before Congress shut down and closed the Capitol to visitors. So it was a good round of visits. Just as an update, I'm sure everybody's been following. Congress has passed 3 supplemental appropriations bills and policy bills to help communities through the COVID crisis right now. The 3rd bill, which was the biggest, the $2 trillion bill, actually included $25 billion for the Federal Transit Administration to push down to transit agencies across the country. I see Debbie's on the call. I'm not sure. I know the money comes from FTA to the area, and it's divvied up among all the transit authorities. So I don't know the final numbers for how it was divided up among PSTA, HART, TBARTA, and the others, but Debbie may have those numbers. But Congress is now in the process of working on, I guess what they're calling it, phase 3.5, which is a smaller bill to infuse more money into the Small Business Administration. SBA ran out of funding yesterday to make loans to small businesses, and Congress has been unable this week to get unanimous consent to replenish that fund. So it looks like they're going to have to punt that to next week and continue to negotiate with the Republicans, Democrats, and the White House with the hope of getting that done next week. Congress is actually in recess until at least May 4th. The House and Senate won't come back until at least May 4th. At that point, they're going to start working on what they call phase 4, which is another infusion of capital and policy issues to help the country out. We don't know exactly what's going to be in that. There have been lots of things discussed. At one point, the speaker had tossed out the idea of throwing infrastructure projects into that bill, but then she sort of backed off from that and said it would be more of a replenishment of the funds that were included in the CARES Act, the phase 3 bill. And so there's still good conversation going on about a potential infrastructure bill sometime later this year, but we don't know what the timing for that will be. We also don't know where the administration is or the committees are relative to future funding for transit agencies, that we don't know what they're thinking about that. I think APTA is out advocating for additional funds for the agencies, but we don't know what the numbers will be there. On the regular legislative side, we just have been hearing from the House and Senate Appropriations Committees this week. In the midst of all that they're doing on the emergency side, they're now beginning to work on their regularly scheduled fiscal year 21 appropriations bills. They were scheduled to mark up the first bills this week in the House. That's obviously been delayed, but we've received a letter from the chair of the committee just this morning saying that they're continuing to work through the process and that they hope to move regular appropriations bills through the House, and the Senate says through the Senate starting in June and July. So they're hoping to get back to some semblance of regular order. They're in much the same situation you all are, having to conduct meetings virtually right now, and they're trying to figure out if they can even hold hearings and markup sessions virtually like this. So it's been a challenge for the Congress to get everybody together to convene. With that, I'm going to yield over to my colleague, Steve Palmer. He just had a conversation with the chair of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee to give you an update on some of the authorization issues.
Thank you, Harry. Before I get into that conversation, I'd just like to add a little more context to what Harry was talking about. This next piece of legislation that's being considered in the Senate particularly, but the House and Senate are negotiating with the White House, is not just money for more money for the small business loan program, but there's all of you coming from local governments, there's a fight over how much money can and should go to state and local governments too, counties and cities. Anywhere between, the Democrats are advocating for anywhere between $150 billion, which could go largely through the Community Development Block Grant Program. So there'd be $55 billion, $53 billion available to counties and cities, or $250 billion, which is something that the cities and counties have coalesced around recently that would go to cities of 50,000 people or more. So that's one of the flashpoints in terms of getting this next piece of legislation passed. And obviously we don't know where that's going, but I think there's going to be a hard push to get more money for cities and counties. Looking ahead, as Harry pretty much covered the waterfront, on the infrastructure, I don't think there's any sense that there is going to be an infrastructure bill, other than we know the FAST Act, the Surface Transportation Bill, has to be reauthorized. I think there's a desire by many people to spend money on infrastructure, but I just don't think there is a coalescing of certainty that that's going to happen yet, because a number of congressional Republicans are saying we're spending too much money already. One of the interesting developments in the last week was the state DOTs have come forward with a proposal for $50 billion to help them maintain their construction programs, both for highway and transit. And so that would help TBARTA, it would help the region if that were to come to pass. Now, moving to the conversation I had with Chairman DeFazio, I was on the Zoom call with him and a group. He kind of poo-pooed the idea of $50 billion for state DOTs. He really said, well, we're thinking more in the range of $10 to $12 billion. And he said, I'm not sure how much support that will get right now, because the focus has been putting people back to work, not building new construction. So he did say that he thought an infrastructure bill if it happens, will likely happen once Congress has returned later this summer. So it doesn't bode well for an early piece of legislation, although he said, they're ready to go. They'll be ready to go in early May with both the highway and the transit and passenger rail sections of the bill. One last little bit of interesting information I thought was, he said, we're going to really focus on electrifying the highways. We don't want to spend money on rebuilding highways without making sure they're ready for electric cars or all the information technology that's going to be coming down the pike. So I think he emphasized it's going to be a green bill, and that's good for transit. But he did say there's going to be some other areas like electrification that's going to take a priority, at least in the House bill, when it comes to pass. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you. Answer any questions.
Thank you for the update. I appreciate it this morning. Committee members, do y'all have any questions this morning? It's a great update. Anybody? I have a quick comment, as it relates to the infrastructure funding that they keep talking about, and a certain part of our industry that's also being impacted by the lack of private sector work. infrastructure construction and transit and transportation and the jobs that it creates would definitely help at this time for a large part of our soon to be unemployed construction industry, which is following, you know, kind of behind this curve of financial disaster. And it definitely helps in the construction industry when there's roads and transit systems and water and sewer systems to be constructed in my industry. But thank you for the update. No further questions. David, we move to the next agenda item.
Mr. Chair, that is all of the agenda this morning. I would like to comment. I know Jennifer called roll earlier, and just want to make note that Commissioners Long and Starkey did join the call. I imagine you all did see them log in, but just wanted to note that for the record.
Noted.
Jennifer, do you have that in your records?
Good morning.
Forum for us this morning?
Yes, I did add
Good
that into the
morning.
record.
Thank you. Well, we're done early. Is there any committee members that would like to visit with other committee members about any subject matter this morning before we adjourn?
Come on up and pick
Hearing none,
blueberries.
David.
Here's an invitation for you all
Go
to
ahead.
come pick blueberries at the Starkey Blueberry Farm.
Oh my gosh, is it that time of the year again?
It is. We've been going for about 3 weeks. I think we had 1,100 pickers on Saturday.
Oh my God, I hope they were practicing social distance.
Oh yeah, we have over 40 acres, so there's no problem with that. And
Send me an
washing
invite.
stations, and it's very safe. You can also pick Florida peaches in the Dade City area.
Wow, aren't you full of information?
I need some
Well,
good
I'll
berries.
grab my ruler and head your way because that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We have had a lot of people from Hillsborough come up and pick blueberries, let me tell
Oh,
you.
yeah.
It's been
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
Hey, Commissioner Starkey,
Yes.
are you getting any relief in your county with your citizens receiving unemployment claim checks?
We had some get some, but we're opening up the drive-by sites where you can pick up the forms at our libraries this morning. It starts today. What we haven't had, and I'm very disturbed by it, is the PPP. I put out a call, was it last night? I'm trying to find anyone who was with Bank of America or Truist who received any money. I hear Bank of Tampa, we had 1,300 companies in, I think it was in Pasco through Bank of Tampa get money, but not from the big bank.
Well, I talked to my son this morning. He lives down in Manatee. Not that that's any help to you in Pasco, but he was telling me that he received his his payroll protection money this morning.
From what bank?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm not really sure. I will find out though, and if I have to let you know after the call, I will.
Yeah, anyone else on this call? I know it's not TBARTA related, but it is important to our constituents. Does anyone know of anyone who got PPP from Truist or Bank of America or Wells Fargo?
I'm on the Truist Bank Board, and I have a lot of friends that obviously have applied through them, and I have nobody currently that's received their funding from Truist.
That's what I've heard as well.
If I may make a comment, am I unmuted?
Yes.
No, we can hear you.
Great. Some of the larger banks, what most all the banks are doing right now is providing the PPP money first to any of their customers that have loans with them. The reason is that they get to see what the financials are on a regular basis, and then they'll look at depository relationships second. So it's becoming difficult.
And none of those customers?
What's that?
None of those customers have received any money? None?
Yep, I haven't heard of anybody. Some of the smaller banks, maybe.
Yes, the smaller banks gave out a lot of money. I'm working on this research with Congressman Bilirakis's office. Only the small banks got the money out. None of the big banks, from what I can tell so far, got any money out. It's going to be a
Commissioner Starkey,
catastrophe.
it's Cliff Manuel area. In Commissioner Starkey, in our area, the bank that's gotten the most money out in Hernando County is Capital City Bank. Capital City
Small
Bank.
bank. Small bank.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a problem. I'm hearing that I know a bunch of people who said they're going to pull their money out of those big banks over this fiasco. And Harry, I see you're on the line. I hope that the news channels pick this up, that none of the customers from the big banks are getting any money.
Hey, Commissioner, it's Harry. Just one thing, one of the issues that Steve was talking about, the next appropriations bill and the replenishment of the funds for Small Business Administration. One of the things that the Democrats are pushing is to make sure that at least half that money goes to small and community banks. And so they're trying to move it away from the large banks and put more money in the community banks. That's one of the things we're talking about.
But Harry, it's the community banks that had less bureaucracy that got the money out to their clients. It's the big banks with their bureaucracy that didn't get any money out. So that would be a disaster for a lot of businesses. Someone needs to look at this, because none of the big banks that I know of, unless they pushed it out to only a few clients in large amounts and left the small businesses out. Like we have it in with Bank of America. We got our first email after 2 weeks today saying we didn't have one of our I don't even know what you call it, applications needed a little more information. It's the first time we've heard from Bank of America, but I don't know of anyone from Truist, Wells Fargo, or Bank of America that got any money. Any of my constituents. Nope.
Commissioner Harry, if I may, another issue is when the feds release their dollars, it'd be really good if they could release some of the money to the counties and the municipalities, because when the state gets the money, they have all kinds of strings attached to it, and we can't get the money. In the meantime, we have excuse me, I'm talking. Who else is talking? We have the ability to get these dollars in the hands of our citizens immediately. But the strings that the state puts on everything is very harmful. And here's an example. The $600 that's been allocated to go on the back of the measly $275 unemployment claim checks, the folks can't get that $600 until the state signs off on the fact that we have released that money, and we haven't released any of that money. So if people that are already desperate have to wait for the state to get their act together on what we all know is a horrifically flawed system and has been since the previous administration, what are these people going to do? If we're not careful, we're going to have rioting on the streets.
I personally have been helping deliver food to shut-ins who aren't on anyone's list for food delivery. I don't know how they're, elderly people who don't have cars.
I mean, it's a mess. And putting strings and, holding up the money that's supposed to be available for these people is counterintuitive. Harry, do something.
Well, hey, Commissioner, it's Harry, and Steve's on here too. He can jump in too, but there are two sources of funds should be coming directly to you. The Community Development Block Grant funds out of the CARES Act will come directly to both Pinellas and Pasco counties based on a formula. So I think the counties already received those funds. And then the CARES Act funding for state and local governments that are larger than 500, population of 500,000. I don't know about Pasco, but I know that Pinellas, you submitted your application yesterday, and those funds will flow. I think they're to be released, Steve, if I correct, maybe next Tuesday, directly to the counties. So Pinellas and Pasco should also receive the direct infusion of those funds next week. Is that your recollection, Steve?
Yes.
Yes, any county over 500,000 can direct apply for the emergency money for the feeding, and also for the disaster relief funding. I wonder if they could do some more releases like that to counties over 500. I don't remember what the requirement is for a city. Maybe it's 500,000 as well. But I do think that's helpful in cutting red tape. But I'm very concerned about the PPP. We don't want our businesses to shut, and that so many didn't get to get relief is really disturbing to me.
Hey, Commissioner, it's Harry again. You should make sure you get in contact with Senator Rubio because he is the point in the Congress on the PPE program. He's really running, taking the lead on that. So you ought to make sure that he knows what's going on in Pasco.
Wait, PPE or PPP?
PPP.
Okay, PPP. Yeah. Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
I want to thank all the committee members this morning for participating. I think it's time for us to pass the torch to the next committee meeting this morning. I would like to get an update on where your blueberries are so we can go out and pick some this morning, Commissioner Starkey. And I appreciate you inviting us out. I think that'd be a great trip to make and a good for all of us. So thank you.
Yeah.
We're adjourned.
Very good, Commissioner Long. It's 1 minute till 9 by my clock. So
I'm ready.
we're right on time here. So very
Yes,
good.
we are.
I want to just put this screen up very briefly, just to let everybody know this meeting is being recorded. And with that, Commissioner Long, you can proceed whenever you would like.
Thank you. And with that said, I will go ahead and call the Finance Committee of TBARTA to order. Chris, do we have any folks that want to make public comment?
I would ask Cindy Raskin for that. She's on our phone line now. Cindy, can you tell us, is there anyone who wants to provide public comment?
Good morning. We do not have any callers on the line for public comment this morning.
Well, what do you know? We had 22 people yesterday during our commission workshop. So, all right, let's move on, if we may, to our third item, which is the consent.
Commissioner, I think we need to call the roll for this committee meeting. Is that correct,
I
Jennifer?
wasn't sure how you
Yes.
wanted to proceed since it wasn't on my list of things to take care of. But okay, Jennifer, do you want to call the roll, please?
Yes, Rich McLean,
Present.
Commissioner Mitten, Commissioner Bellamy, Jim Holton, Cliff Manuel,
Present.
and Commissioner Starkey.
Here.
Perfect, thank you.
So do we have a quorum for the Finance Committee, Jennifer?
We do not, but we don't have anything to pass this morning. We only
Good
have
to
information
know.
items.
Good to know. And I would appreciate it if someone, you, Jennifer, or David, you could reach out to those folks that weren't on the call this morning and see if in fact they had a problem getting in. I had a real huge glitch in getting the program to open up on my iPad this morning. So it'd just be nice if we knew if there was an issue so we could get it corrected before our board meeting. All right. Okay, so on to the third item. It's the consent agenda, Finance Committee meetings from February 21st, 2020. I don't know if all of you have had a chance to review those or not.
Commissioner Long, I don't believe you have the most updated agenda because we took that off. We took all of the consent agenda items off and are just working on information items.
Oh, well, I apologize. That was the one that popped into my email first thing this morning. So do we have, you're telling me we're down to information?
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize. Okay, Debbie, do you want to talk about the line of credit update from Pilot Bank?
Absolutely.
Morning.
Good morning. It's good to see everybody.
It is.
Even if it's virtually, it's wonderful to see faces.
Do you like my background?
I do.
Well, TBARTA, hello, Chris, whoever's working on this stuff. It's pretty neat because you just have a generic background and people don't get to peek into your homes and private space.
That would be good. Occasionally, my cat has made appearances in some of my meetings.
There you go.
But we are still working on the line of credit. BMO, Alan Zimmett, and Dwayne Draper have been working with Pilot Bank on this. They have, Pilot Bank is now working with a lawyer, an outside lawyer, who is more familiar with government line of credit. So I'm hopeful that maybe for the next committee meeting that we have, that we might have a product we can bring forward with an agreement for you to review. But this
Excellent.
this has been like birthing an elephant. It's taken forever.
I guess so. We've been talking about it for months already.
I think
Good thing it's not a huge amount of money, huh?
Exactly. But you'll be hearing from Melanie later that as we've been progressing through the line of credit, our balances in the bank have been going up. So that's been good news.
Nice. Very nice to hear. All right. Is there any further discussion from anyone else on this particular agenda item? Anyone? No, seeing no hands raised. On our commission meetings, if you'd like to speak, we just raise our hands, you know, and the chair knows that they need to recognize somebody. So for the board meeting, David, you might want to. Okay. Now on to the discussion items. The February and March.
Commissioner Long?
Yes, is that the wrong agenda again?
Yes, yes. If you would like, I'll go ahead and just give you the topics. And
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So the next item on information items is the CARES Act, and David will be giving us an update on that.
Okay. Well, I don't know why I'm so far behind the times, but in any case, David, I think we have some good news to report about the dollars that TBARTA is receiving, correct?
We do, and good morning, everybody. Obviously, everybody is aware of the CARES Act that was signed into law on March 27th, which basically is providing $2 trillion in support for a variety of industries that were affected by COVID-19. Industries, including the transit industry, which received $25 billion as part of that package. And most of the money going to the transit industry will be administered through FTA's 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Grant Program. The Tampa UZA, which TBARTA is a part of, received $91 million as a part of that $25 billion transit money. And that $91 million will be split 4 ways between HART, PSTA, PCPT, and TBARTA. The bus in Hernando and MCAT in Manatee also will receive money, but they're in different UZAs, so their money comes from a different pot. But of the $91 million for our UZA, TBARTA's share is $2.2 million. The intent of that money initially was for transit agencies to use for prevention, preparation for, and response to COVID-19. It could be used for things such as covering operating costs to maintain service. It could be used to cover lost revenue due to the coronavirus, the purchase of PPE, and also paying administrative leave for personnel due to reductions in service or for people having to stay at home to self-quarantine. But the FTA expanded the uses of the funds to include all activities that are normally eligible under the 5307 grant program, which includes planning, capital, and operating expenses. And those operating activities are eligible for funding beginning January 20th. And there's no limit on the amount of funds that can be used for the operating expenses. Activities are funded at 100% federal share, meaning that there is no required state or local match, and there is no lapse date to the funds. So basically, they are available until they're expended. They do not expire. And there's no date at which the funds need to be obligated. So there's no deadline by which transit agencies need to apply for the funds, although the federal government does want transit agencies to get the funds under contract as quickly as possible. There was initial conversation when the first guidance came out about the funds being used for specific coronavirus expenses that, TBARTA just really didn't need the full $2.2 million. But since they have opened up the allowable activities for which the money can be used, having talked with Debbie, we thought it was a good idea to go ahead and apply for those funds and to just, hold on to them because, they don't lapse again. And, we don't know if this, coronavirus will go away, and God forbid it resurfaces a year from now. So the fact that they don't expire is certainly a good thing. Our next step is to get with Debbie and her team at PSTA to coordinate a grant application and to figure out what activity line items we can include in a grant application for TBARTA.
Great. That's great news. Any questions from the members of the Finance Committee? Hearing no questions. Ms. Jennifer,
Commissioner
what?
Flame is asking for raised his hand.
Okay, I cannot see him. I don't know.
Commissioner Long, yeah, I just had a question of David or Debbie. So does this mean we have to expend the funds first in order to get reimbursement, or do we apply for the funds, get the funds, and then the ability to spend?
We have to apply. Well, it covers operating expenses beginning January 20th. So in order to be reimbursed, you have to apply for the funds, get them, under contract in the form of an agreement, but any operating expenses that are incurred after January 20th are eligible for reimbursement through this specific grant. And this is for everybody. So I know, Rich, you represent HART. So everything that I'm saying for TBARTA also applies for HART as well.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. So Ms. Jennifer, what is the next item on your agenda?
Okay, our next item is the CAP grant resolution, and that will be Cindy Raskin giving us an update.
Cindy?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. So every year, TBARTA applies for the Commuter Assistance Program grant funding from the Florida Department of Transportation. Our resolution today is just an information item. It'll be on the meeting next week. Basically, the resolution is just a formality that the TBARTA board is accepting the funding for the program. It's $870,000. The amount is budgeted, and it covers the staff that's appointed to work on the program. It covers marketing, technology, and some of the van pool subsidies. So that is what the resolution is. Ordinarily, we would ask you to review it and recommend it, but since you don't vote today, this is just an information.
Well, I think we can recommend it, but we just can't vote on it, right? All right, Jennifer, next.
Okay, our last item on information item is the fiscal year 2019 audit, and Melanie will be updating us on that.
Good morning.
Hey, Melanie, good morning.
Good morning. So we are in the process currently of our FY19 audit. We had a kickoff meeting with CLA on April 6th, and this was to go over the timeline of the audit. Our deadline to complete the audit is June 30th. However, normally the audit is presented in the June board meeting. But however, this year we do not have a board meeting currently scheduled. So this raises the issue on if we need to schedule a June board meeting, unless it would be presented in July. And that's pretty much the update. Everything is going great. We had the timeline. The only concern is right now, we currently do not have a June board meeting scheduled for CLA to present the audit.
When is the next one that's scheduled?
The next one is, I think we have one scheduled in May, May 15th. And going over the timeline, usually they're not done until the 1st of June to present it in the June board meeting.
I would suggest, if I may, that we might want to think about scheduling a meeting in June, because if with a little luck and the grace of God, we actually might be in the process of reopening our economy by then. And it would be good just to get an update on all kinds of things, I would think. Harry, I see you still there. Any ideas of where we might be come June with Congress?
Well, hopefully they're back in session. And as I mentioned in the legislative committee call, their plan is to get back to doing their regular fiscal year 21 appropriations bills. And Steve, I think Steve's also still on there, I think, trying to at least do a temporary, if not a long-term highway transit authorization bill. So I think they're moving along there. There still is an interest in potentially doing some infrastructure projects to help the economy maybe later this year. And so I think Congress will be very active this summer.
Good. So it might be a good opportunity for us to kick off the beginning of the summer by trying to get everybody back together again. David, do you have any thoughts?
I think it would be a great idea. And, you know, I know the, you know, hope for everyone on the board was to reduce the number of TBARTA meetings throughout the course of the year. And we certainly move forward with the intent to do that. But as things are playing out, you know, TBARTA is working on a lot, as well as I know everybody else is. And I think it would certainly be a good idea to go ahead and schedule a June board meeting.
I agree, because surely when we made those decisions, we had no thought in our minds that we'd be facing what we are today.
And the other challenge that has, you know, developed as a relation of reducing the number of meetings is, you know, future meeting topics. I know we talk about that during the board meetings, and the list of topics continues to grow. You know, we're still continuing to move forward with our own internal projects, and we've got board meeting months when, you know, we need to provide updates on those projects. But without having meetings in certain months, we're forced to add other topics onto the agenda, which makes those particular meetings much longer than ordinary meetings would be. So I think adding a June board would definitely
I
be
do
beneficial.
think it's important to point out that we are still a relatively young board and a young agency, and we are in the process of evolving and evolving very quickly. So, you know, I was never really a proponent of doing that. And I understand the reasoning why we have, because clearly it's a very large board and it's regional in nature. That all said, the fact that we now have this opportunity to convene by Zoom leads me to the thought that we could schedule the meetings, and for whatever reason, if the rest of the day's schedule doesn't allow someone to come from, say, Manatee or Pasco or wherever else our board members are coming from, it would be quite easy for them to log into our meeting via this technology. Do you not agree?
I agree completely.
Something to think about. I mean, there's really, unless you're in bed, you know, desperately ill, I'm not quite sure why you couldn't really participate from anywhere, given this technology. So with that said, yes, I see that our board member, Rich McLean, would like to be recognized. Go ahead, Rich.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. And I would have to second your thoughts about a June board meeting. I think with as fluid things are right now and how they're impacting us directly, I think it'd be beneficial. In terms of additional board meetings, I think we all voted to reduce a little bit of our board meetings, not all together, and I think we went either to 8 or 9 a year now. That was done at the request of a lot of folks on the board, but we wanted to also keep them in person. I agree right now, Commissioner Long, that under the circumstances, this is a fantastic way to do our board meetings and all. But in the future, as we come out of this, which I hope is sooner than later, and as we get back to whatever sense of normalcy is, I still believe those in-person board meetings are a better way to go. I think it's a better feel. I think it presents better to our communities. But obviously, this is a great alternative if things can't change. So bottom line is I do support a June board meeting. I would like to see that, particularly with the way things are progressing right now. And then, of course, Zoom is always an alternative.
Thank you. Brian, did you have a comment you wanted to make? I thought I saw your hand raised. No? All right, anyone else wish to speak? Okay, next, Jennifer, what is on the agenda for
I do
next?
see Alan
Okay.
raising his hand. And Alan,
Oh.
I don't know if he wants recognition.
I'm sorry?
Alan Zimmett has his hand raised. So Alan.
Oh, I don't see Alan on
Oh,
here. Oh, there you are.
Here.
Oh, it's so nice to see you this morning. How are you?
Good to see you, Commissioner. As much as I enjoy the idea of having Zoom meetings going forward, let's remember that the governor's emergency order gave us until he declares that the emergency is over to meet like this. And then afterwards, we'll be back to having the requirement of a physical quorum being present to conduct our meetings. So while we're all getting to know how well Zoom works and GoToMeeting works, the law is going to require us to come back together, and maybe by the June meeting. So the other thing I wanted to note about the June meeting, it might, as Debbie mentioned, we're trying to get the line of credit ready. Well, I'm hopeful we can have it on the May board agenda. If we have a June meeting, that would be a good fallback for us in terms of getting the line of credit documents finalized.
Terrific. Thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow, as always. Thank you, Alan. Anybody else? Anyone? Okay, then. Jennifer, next.
Okay, so the last item on our agenda for today is a discussion item of our March 2020 financials with Melanie.
Melanie?
Yes, good morning. So
Morning.
the packet with the financials, you can follow along. So for the end of March, year to date through the month of March, we had a surplus of 181,000, and this was 218,000 under the budget number of 400,000. So looking at what make up the revenues, we're approximately under budget by $2.4 million, and this is mainly due to the state funding of the timing of the PD&E technology project, and we will continue to be under budget for this through the remaining of the fiscal year. So offset it with that, we're pretty much under budget with all the expenses of the $2.1 million, but the 1.7 is primarily due to 1.7 million under budget, which relates to the services for the PD&E technology technology study, I'm sorry. Moving over to the balance sheet, however, looking at the AR, our AR at the end of March is approximately $900,000. So this is a very great improvement from the last meeting of $1.6 million. So we have reduced our AR balance by $700,000. So, which is phenomenal. So offsetting with that was the AP, which is $500,000, and that was from my last meeting, $600,000. So that is also a reduction of about $100,000. At the end of March in our bank, we had $310,000 in the bank at the end of March. So very good improvement. Working with FDOT, they've been great on getting the invoices processed and helping us reduce the AR and get some vendors paid. And
All right.
that concludes my report.
Any questions for Melanie on the report? I have a question, Melanie. Are all of our past due bills, have they all been paid? Are we up to date with all of that now?
Pretty much. The only one is Tyndale Oliver, which I've talked to FDOT and they're in the process of processing those invoices, but everybody else is pretty much up to date. We're moving into the right direction.
Well, I continue to be concerned about Tyndale Oliver because they have been terrific partners of ours, and they've been on the wrong end of the stick in terms of getting paid for months. So at what point do you think we will have them totally caught up?
By next week. I did talk to FDOT and they're in the process with financial services in getting those payments. We did have, since our last meeting, we did make a payment to Tyndale Oliver up until I think January. So they're pretty much, since our last meeting, they have been paid. And then pretty much the holdup is when we do an alternative pay option, we have to show proof that we paid those invoices. So once we show proof that we paid them, and then after that, we continue on with the payment process. So it's to continue going.
But so we have the money to pay them now, correct? I heard you say we had a substantial amount of money in the budget, thank the good Lord.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have made a payment to them. Yes, since our last meeting.
Terrific. And we'll keep on top of that going forward, I trust.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Okay. Anything else from the rest of the board? Anything for further discussion that we haven't already talked about? Commissioner Starkey, are you still there?
I am here.
Did you see my blueberry cup?
No, where's your blueberry cup?
Okay, watch. Can you see it?
Oh, I'll have to get you a Starkey blueberry cup.
But
Very
look
nice.
Look at, I got, Maine is the blueberry capital of the United States, just FYI, unless you're trying to compete with them. But they have the whole entire line of plates, dishes, cups, saucers, serving dishes. It's really beautiful.
So we carry the Bluet wine from Maine, which is a blueberry kind of a champagne, a sparkly wine. It's really good.
I know.
But Maine blueberries are low bush and Florida blueberries are high bush. And all of you, when you're in Publix, please complain about the Mexican blueberries that are killing the Florida farmers. I just emailed the White House complaining again. I couldn't get that fixed with USMCA, but
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, they're killing us.
Did you say that you sent us the invitation to go pick?
Yes,
I will
wait for it.
I will make one with a map.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
And you sparked my interest on the blueberry champagne.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really good. It is good. It is
Yeah.
very good. All right, for the good of the order, is there anything else?
Here
Seeing
comes
nothing.
Mr. Blueberry behind me. There he goes.
Oh, wait, I have to, yeah. All right, everybody, stay safe and stay healthy. It's good to see you all this morning, and hopefully we'll be back together again in June, if not before.
Well, we have the policy meeting next, committee meeting.
Hey, are we going to discuss a date? Because I only have one date available that I know of in June. We
And
talked
what date would that be?
June 19th. The weekend before, the Friday before is SAC. Hopefully we still have our state meeting, and after that there's a global Tampa Bay mission. I'm checking to see if that's still on, but I haven't got confirmation if the global Tampa Bay trip to Costa Rica is on or not.
Yeah, well, June is usually a busy month for those of us that serve on commissions. So I trust that David or Jennifer or somebody's going to be reaching out to see if June 19th. Does that work for everybody else, as you know right now? Yes, Rich, I see Rich. Okay.
Yes.
Good. All right, well then.
So if I could just add that as part of the Finance Committee update at the board meeting next week, I think that would be a great opportunity to recommend to the board chair that we add a June 19th board meeting for TBARTA.
I will do that. Thank you so much. All right. With all of that said, thank you everyone for participating, and I guess we'll see you all next week at the TBARTA meeting. And for those that serve on the policy, is it policy next, Rich? Okay, good. I guess I'll just stay right here and listen in if that's okay. All right, bye.
Very good. So we're a couple minutes early before the 9:30 start, so I'm just going to put up the slide briefly here, just to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded. Cindy Raskin is overseeing our public comment, and whenever you need to see if there's public comment in the meeting, please ask her and she will let us know. Our public comment policies are posted on tbarta.com, and you can see them down below as well. With that, we're a couple minutes early, but I will take the slide down, and Rich, whenever you would like to proceed, if we need to wait till 9:30, we can certainly do that. I see he's stepped away for a minute, so he's taking the break here.
Chris, we
Got
can wait till
great
9:30.
news for everybody.
Yes.
While we were visiting, I was online looking up Sturkey blueberries, and they have a Facebook page you can join, and has directions and everything you need to know about how to go get blueberries from the Starkeys. So I'm signed up now and in.
I think we're all gonna have to sign up for that.
Had to do this morning.
Just remember, maintain your 6-foot distance next to your fellow blueberry picker.
I'm bringing my tape measure. Yeah, I'm gonna bring my tape measure with me. Keep
Very
everybody
safe. We have a lot of doctors coming up from Tampa to pick blueberries with their whole family. So we installed in our hand washing station, which we've always had, a foot action pump. So you don't even have to touch the nozzles. You'll get a food grade bag. So you're not holding a bucket like we normally do. We usually put the bag in the bucket and you hold the bucket. And then after that, you can drive up the power line on our ranch road to Starkey Market and get some fresh blueberry lemonade.
Hey, David, FYI, and for everybody's information, Doyle has let me know that on June 19th, we have an all-day budget information session scheduled for the county commission. So for me, that day is not going to work.
And it may be that Costa Rica trip's off, and that would be the 12th. So that could be another day to throw out there, or we can never get everyone, so.
All right. Hey, Rich, it's 9:29 by my clock, so I would say we're pretty much good to go, and you can begin. Just a reminder to everyone that this meeting is being recorded. So, Rich, whenever you'd like to proceed, please do.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And we'll go ahead and call the Policy Committee meeting for 17 April to order. And Jennifer, if you could do a roll call, please.
Sure. Rich McLean,
Present.
Commissioner Mitten, Commissioner Bellamy, Jim Holton, Cliff Manuel,
Present.
Commissioner Starkey.
Here, getting coffee.
Thank you, Jennifer. Cindy, do we have any public comments by chance?
We do not have any callers on the line for public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll step down to item 4 which is the consent agenda items, and we have no consent agenda items. So we'll move right on to the information item. And the information item revolves around resolution 2020-4, suspension of physical quorum requirements. Normally, I think under normal times, we would have had this in the policy meeting and brought this up to the board for discussion and all, but we're not in normal times, so we implemented it right away. And I asked Alan to get on, and Alan's going to give you a little bit more background about this. We had some discussions, of course, already with this smaller group, but Alan, over to you for a few minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This resolution, as everyone is aware, emergency has been declared by the president and the governor in I think all of our counties that are within the TBARTA area related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The governor, one of his executive orders that he issued was requiring people to stay at home and allowing people to leave their homes only for essential services. Also, many of the facilities where we hold our meetings have been closed to the public, making holding a meeting in person rather difficult and also maybe violative of the social distancing practices that we are all trying to observe. The governor's also limited all gatherings to 10 people. So what he has done in order to allow local governments like TBARTA to meet is he has suspended all statutes that require a physical quorum to be present. One of those statutes is a statute that created TBARTA that has a requirement that for TBARTA governing board to meet, it requires 7 board members to be physically present. So that statute has been suspended that allows TBARTA to meet as we are this morning virtually by Zoom or other similar type applications. This resolution would confirm the governor's executive order that authorizes virtual meetings, would authorize the board and the committees to conduct their meetings remotely by what's called communication media technology. It would establish the procedures for those meetings that would be compliant with the governor's executive order, which references a specific statute that sets up certain procedures for meetings to be held virtually. And it would expire when the governor's declared state of emergency is terminated, as we just kind of discussed, because the governor's suspension of the requirement for the physical quorum will expire at the same time. So that's what the resolution will do. It'll be on the agenda for the board to consider at its next meeting as the first agenda item.
Thank you, Alan. Do I have any questions from anybody out there in Zoom land? Okay, seeing none. Alan, I did have one small question. Is there a timeline associated with this? Is there a notional timeline, or is it just open-ended until the governor declares us back open?
Yeah, it'll expire when the governor lifts his state of emergency. So he will issue another executive order lifting the state of emergency. Hopefully sooner rather than later we can get to that point, but it'll be tied to that executive order.
So I guess for David and Chris and the team, it sounds like we'll be operating in this mode until then.
Yeah, well, we know we're going to be operating this way until the end of May at this point. But I'm sure the governor will reassess things and make a determination if he needs to extend the emergency. So that's the time we're living in right now.
Thank you. And Commissioner Long?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner McLean. I just wanted to reiterate, as Alan was saying, that in each of the governor's orders, he does have an end date attached to them. And we have been moving in lock concert with the governor's orders to rethink what we're doing in our county as it relates to our own emergency order. So I venture to say that all of the counties will be doing the same thing. That said, I would venture to say it's probably a very realistic thought that by June, we will not be able to be using any of the facilities we currently use, regardless of the executive order, because we all know that even when we start to bring our economy back up again, we are still going to be practicing social distancing guidelines for quite some time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, if I could just address what we may have to look at doing, as Commissioner Long says, is finding a location where we can meet, and maybe we might have to limit the public to 10 people and have them all sit 6 feet apart. And we might have to also conduct the meeting by way of Zoom and telephone so that the public can still access the meeting, observe the meeting, and comment. So we might have to do a mixture, and that'll be something that Chris, David, and I will be working on as we get closer and find out what the realities are that we're working with. So as we look at the June meeting, David, Chris, and I are going to have to be working on how we're going to figure all that out. But we might have a meeting that's conducted both physically and also virtually.
So a hybrid meeting, so to speak. Commissioner Starkey, did you have any comments? Okay, thank you. Okay, so yes, Alan, sounds like a hybrid meeting going forward if the executive order is given to lift the emergency. Okay. All right, very good. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is our discussion and action items. As in the past with the policy, this one here is a relook at our procurement manual, and an updated procurement manual was sent out to the policy team here. And so I'm going to turn this over to Al Burns for a few minutes to talk to us about the updated procurement manual. And then with the policy committee, you'll have a task to kind of review that and bring it back to the next policy committee meeting with your comments. And then we'll move that to the board shortly afterwards. But Al, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Al Burns, Director of Procurement, PSTA Staff Resource. A little bit of background. The policy manual, the current procurement policy was approved in October of 2018. And then it was also amended in January of 2018. Our current procurement manual is a sound manual. It provides good guidance and it complies with the areas as it pertains to a triennial review. However, as we're all aware, TBARTA has applied to become a FTA grant recipient. With that, FTA did a look at our current procurement manual and said that it needed to have be more comprehensive in all the policies. And the policies that there's in being more comprehensive, it has to do with what is known as PSR, and that stands for Procurement System Review. And that's pretty much a top to bottom audit of an agency's procurement manual. And it's a top to bottom audit of the agency's procurement system. David reached out to me and he asked me to help develop the procurement manual. And I initially used PSTA, HART, and other transit agencies' procurement manuals, and all of that was in accordance with the FTA 4221F. And I sent him a strong, what I feel is a strong baseline. David then looked at the procurement manual and he made some changes and recommendations to it and sent that to BMO or General Counsel for review. With that, I will turn it over to David for any additional comment.
Yes, thanks, Al. And that was a great summary of the background. And you know, to give everybody an update on the our grant app or our designated recipient application to FTA, they have reached out and provided some feedback about the packet, and they have approved every part of the packet with the exception of this one item. So at the point that we can, you know, finish updating the manual, have the board adopt it, we can then turn it into FTA and they can complete the review and approve TBARTA to become the designated recipient that we are hoping to become. One of the other items that we use to develop some of the policies is what's called 4220.1F. That is the FTA circular that covers third-party contracting guidance. And that is kind of the procurement Bible from the FTA standpoint. So if I could direct everybody, I know we attached the procurement manual into the meeting packet. The last 2 pages of this information are what's called procurement system elements. It's a laundry list of 77 items that the FTA asked for us to incorporate into our procurement manual. So between Al and I, we went down through that list to make sure that we did in fact cover all of these items, and to make it easier for FTA when they go in and review our manual, I added an additional column on the right-hand side to identify the specific page number that that particular item could be located in, just to help them in their review. It is a much more comprehensive manual than we had in the past, but you know, there could be additional things that we want to come to the board with or the policy committee with in the future to make it even stronger than what we're presenting to you now. Alan Zimmett and BMO did review the manual. However, the comments that they provided are not incorporated into what is in front of you right now. So we will go through that discussion between now and next month, and I'll be sure that we incorporate BMO's suggestions into a final draft, which we will provide for you at the May Policy Committee meeting.
David, thank you. And I will tell you that as somebody who's done reviews in the past, having a page number identified with an item that is due to be looked at is always beneficial. So good job there with the laundry list on the back 2 pages. I'll open this up for any questions that the committee or anyone on the line might have. Okay, seeing none, our way forward with the policy committee, of course, is you now have that manual in front of you. I would ask that you go ahead and take some time to review it, and we'll come back to our next policy meeting. Jennifer, do we know when the next policy meeting is in May?
I have to pull it up, but I believe it's May 15th. Let me just double check.
Okay, so yeah, May 15th there. I just got it.
Yes, it is May 15th.
Okay, so come back to the May 15th policy committee meeting with any comments or concerns you have, and then there we'll go ahead and discuss that, and then hopefully move it to the full board for approval. So Al and David, thank you. This is a good kind of mod, if you will, to the policy manual, and good update to it. And so we're looking forward to seeing that and talking about it a little bit more in May, and then moving that to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to see you again.
Yes, thank you too. No questions on that. We'll move to our next item, which I actually believe is other business. Do we have any other business out there for the policy committee? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. I don't have any. Future meeting subjects, of course, Jennifer just mentioned our next meeting is 15 May. Definitely the procurement manual will be one of those items we discuss. And then Alan, what I'd like to do is possibly at the next meeting, if we have any updates on 2020-4, maybe we'll provide some of that too at the policy committee meeting, if you don't mind, David, if we have updates. Okay. Any other comments, questions, topics of discussion, thoughts? Okay, with that said, I'm going to adjourn that meeting, but before I do, I'm going to say it was great seeing everybody there. Please take care, stay healthy, and Commissioner Starkey, I look forward to the invite for blueberry picking.
Well, the invite's out there. Just go to Facebook, and you'll see where we're located. It's you have to kind of drive through a little bit of the ranch to get there off of Starkey Boulevard. But if you're coming up, let me know, and I'll come meet you.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay,
Hey.
Thank you. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Jennifer and David and team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, nice job pulling this together.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, David and your team, everybody did a great job.
All right, thanks, Rich.
Thanks.